Marcus Williams adjusted his worn leather jacket as he stepped into the gleaming marble lobby of Vogue Atelier, one of Manhattan's most prestigious fashion houses. The contrast couldn't have been starker, his weathered work boots against polished Italian marble, his simple jeans amid an environment where a single handbag cost more than most people's monthly rent. He'd saved for months just to afford this consultation, driven by a dream that had sustained him through years of working double shifts at the auto repair shop in Brooklyn. The receptionist, a willowy blonde whose outfit probably cost more than Marcus's monthly grocery budget, looked up from her computer screen with barely concealed disdain. Her eyes traveled from his scuffed boots to his earnest face, lingering on the small grease stain on his jacket that he'd tried unsuccessfully to remove the night before. "Can I help you?" she asked, her tone suggesting she'd rather not. "I have an appointment with Sebastian Rothschild at 3, Marcus said, checking his phone. "I'm a few minutes early." She tapped her manicured nails against the desk, clearly skeptical. "And you are?" "Marcus Williams. I'm here about designing a clothing line." The receptionist's eyebrows shot up so high they nearly disappeared into her platinum hairline. She exchanged a look with her colleague, and Marcus caught the subtle eye roll. "Right. Well, Mr. Rothschild is running late. You can wait over there." She gestured dismissively toward a cluster of avant-garde chairs that looked more like art installations than furniture. Marcus settled into one of the uncomfortable seats, trying to ignore the stares from the handful of other people in the lobby, all of whom looked like they'd stepped off the pages of fashion magazines. He pulled out a worn notebook from his jacket pocket, the same one he'd been sketching in since high school. The pages were filled with designs, ideas he'd been developing for years during his lunch breaks and late into the night after work. 20 minutes passed, then 40. Marcus watched as other clients arrived and were immediately whisked away to meetings. Each time he approached the desk to ask about his appointment, the receptionist would sigh dramatically and tell him Mr. Rothschild would be just a few more minutes. Finally, at nearly 4 o'clock, a tall man with silver hair swept into the lobby wearing what Marcus assumed must be a very expensive suit. Sebastian Rothschild moved with the fluid confidence of someone who'd never questioned his place in any room. His eyes scanned the lobby and landed on Marcus with unmistakable surprise. "You're Williams?" Sebastian's crisp British accent carried clearly across the marble space, loud enough that conversations stopped and heads turned. Marcus stood, extending his hand. "Yes, sir, thank you for meeting with me." Sebastian ignored the offered handshake, looking Marcus up and down like he was evaluating livestock. "I must say, I was expecting someone different. When my assistant told me someone wanted to discuss fashion design, I assumed." He trailed off with a slight smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I know I don't look like your typical client," Marcus said steadily, "but I think you'll be surprised by what I have to show you." Sebastian's laugh was sharp and cutting. "Oh, I'm already surprised. Trust me. But since you're here, come along. Though I must warn you, fashion isn't just about having ideas. It's about understanding culture, sophistication, the ineffable quality of taste. It's not something one simply learns from watching television or flipping through magazines." As they walked toward Sebastian's office, passing walls lined with photographs of supermodels and celebrities, Marcus felt the weight of every condescending word. But he'd faced worse than this. Growing up in East New York, working his way through community college while supporting his mother and younger sister, he'd learned that people's initial judgments rarely told the whole story. Sebastian's office was a shrine to excess, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park, walls covered with awards and photographs of him with various celebrities, and a desk that looked like it belonged in a palace. Sebastian settled behind it like a king on his throne, gesturing for Marcus to take the chair across from him. "So," Sebastian said, leaning back in his leather chair, "enlighten me. What makes you think you understand fashion?" Marcus opened his notebook carefully, as if handling something precious. "I've been designing clothes since I was 15. Started because my sister needed something special for her prom, and we couldn't afford what she wanted, so I made it." "How charming," Sebastian interrupted with a patronizing smile. "A little home economics project. But fashion, real fashion, isn't about making prom dresses in your kitchen. It's about understanding the zeitgeist, about creating pieces that speak to the cultural moment. It's about knowing instinctively what will resonate with people who matter." Marcus felt his jaw tighten, but he kept his voice level. "Maybe you'd like to see some of my work before you decide what I understand." Of course. Sebastian waved his hand magnanimously. "Show me these creations." Marcus opened his notebook to the first page, where he'd sketched a jacket, clean lines, practical but elegant, with subtle details that elevated it beyond ordinary workwear. He'd drawn it from every angle, included notes about fabric choices, construction techniques, and the inspiration behind the design. Sebastian glanced at it for perhaps 3 seconds before turning the page, then another. His expression grew more dismissive with each sketch. I see. Very functional. Rather like the sort of thing one might find at, oh, what do you call those places? Walmart? The words hit Marcus like physical blows, but he pressed on. This line is designed for working people who want to look good without sacrificing comfort or durability. People who don't understand fashion. Sebastian cut him off. You see, this is exactly what I mean. You're thinking like a mechanic trying to play dress up, not like a designer. Real fashion isn't about making clothes for people who work with their hands and come home dirty. It's about aspiration, about creating pieces that transform the wearer into something more than they were. Marcus closed his notebook slowly. And what if the person wearing it is already something more than you think they are? Sebastian's laugh was genuinely amused now, as if Marcus had told a particularly good joke. Oh, that's rich. Look, I appreciate your enthusiasm. Truly, but fashion is an art form that requires breeding, education, exposure to the finer things in life. It's not something one learns in auto repair school or wherever it is you work. The contempt in Sebastian's voice was unmistakable now, and Marcus realized this meeting had been a joke from the beginning. Sebastian had never intended to take him seriously. This was entertainment, a diversion to break up an otherwise ordinary Tuesday. I can see you're disappointed, Sebastian continued, his tone mockingly sympathetic, but perhaps this is for the best. You seem like a nice enough fellow. Maybe stick to what you know? Leave fashion to those who actually understand it. Marcus stood up, tucking his notebook back into his jacket. You're right about one thing. I am disappointed, but not for the reason you think. Oh, Sebastian raised an eyebrow, clearly enjoying himself. I'm disappointed that someone with your reputation would judge work without really looking at it. I'm disappointed that you'd dismiss someone based on where they come from instead of what they have to offer. But mostly, I'm disappointed in myself for thinking this would be different. Sebastian's smile faltered slightly. Now see here. No, you see here, Marcus said, his voice quiet but firm. You spent this whole meeting telling me I don't understand fashion, but I think the real problem is that you don't understand people, and without that, all the breeding and education in the world won't help you. Marcus walked out of the office, through the marble lobby where conversations stopped again as people watched him leave, and out onto the bustling sidewalk. The late afternoon sun felt warm on his face, a stark contrast to the cold reception he'd just endured. He pulled out his phone and called his sister Keisha. How'd it go? She asked immediately. About like we expected, Marcus said, hailing a taxi. But that's okay, I got what I needed. Which was confirmation that we're doing this the right way. 3 months later, Marcus was in his converted garage workspace in Brooklyn, surrounded by fabric samples, sewing machines, and the organized chaos of creation. He'd taken his savings, every penny he'd put aside for the failed meeting with Sebastian and more, and invested it in equipment and materials. Keisha, who had a business degree and worked in marketing, had quit her corporate job to join him full-time. Their first collection was small, just 12 pieces, but each one was carefully crafted with the attention to detail that Marcus had been developing for years. The line was called Everyday Excellence, and it was exactly what he'd tried to explain to Sebastian, clothing that was beautiful and well-made but designed for real people living real lives. The breakthrough came when Marcus decided to document their process on social media, not the polished, edited version that most fashion brands presented, but the real story, late nights in the garage, the struggles with suppliers who didn't take them seriously, the small victories when a design finally came together perfectly. Keisha was the one who suggested they share the story of the meeting with Sebastian. People need to know why we're doing this, she said. They need to understand that this brand exists because someone told us we didn't belong in fashion. Marcus was hesitant at first. He didn't want to seem bitter or vindictive, but when he finally posted the video, speaking honestly about his experience at Vogue Atelier, the response was overwhelming. The video was shared thousands of times in the first hour, then tens of thousands. Comments poured in from people who'd had similar experiences, who'd been told they weren't smart enough, sophisticated enough, or simply enough. But it wasn't just sympathy that drove the response. When Marcus showed pieces from the Everyday Excellence collection, When he explained the thought process behind each design and the quality of construction that went into every garment, people began to understand what Sebastian had been too arrogant to see. Within a week, Marcus had received orders for every piece in his collection and a waiting list of hundreds more. Fashion bloggers began reaching out, asking for interviews. A reporter from the Wall Street Journal wanted to write about the brand's origin story. The real turning point came when celebrity stylist Rachel Kim, known for her work with A-list actors and musicians, reached out directly. She'd seen the video and wanted to see the collection in person. "I work with clients who are tired of wearing clothes that make them feel like they're playing dress up," she explained when she visited the Brooklyn workshop. "They want to look like elevated versions of themselves, not like they're wearing costumes. This is exactly what I've been looking for." Within a month, Marcus's designs were appearing on red carpets and magazine covers, but more importantly to him, they were being worn by teachers and nurses and engineers and small business owners, people who saw themselves reflected in the brand's values. The success brought opportunities Marcus had never imagined. Department stores that had initially rejected his line began calling, wanting to place orders. Fashion weeks in New York, Paris, and Milan extended invitations. Magazine editors who had once ignored his emails now wanted exclusive interviews. It was during New York Fashion Week, 6 months after his humiliating meeting with Sebastian, that Marcus received an unexpected phone call. The number was unfamiliar, but the voice was unmistakable. "Marcus, this is Sebastian Rothschild. I think we need to talk." Marcus was in his hotel room, preparing for his first ever runway show the next day. The irony wasn't lost on him that Sebastian was calling now, when Marcus no longer needed validation from anyone in the traditional fashion establishment. "Mr. Rothschild," Marcus said calmly, "what can I do for you? I've been following your success. Of course, quite remarkable. Really, I wanted to reach out because I think there might be an opportunity for us to work together. Vogue Atelier could provide the kind of infrastructure and industry connections that could take your brand to the next level." Marcus sat down on the edge of the hotel bed, staring out at the city lights. "That's interesting. What changed your mind?" There was a pause. "Well, clearly I underestimated the market appeal of your aesthetic. The numbers don't lie, and your brand has captured something that resonates with consumers. I think my initial assessment was perhaps hasty." "Your initial assessment was that I didn't understand fashion because I'm a black man from Brooklyn who works with his hands," Marcus said quietly. "You decided what I was capable of before you looked at a single design. You were dismissive, condescending, and rude, and now you want to partner with me because I'm making money?" Another pause, longer this time. "Marcus, I think you're being rather unfair. Business is business." "You're right," Marcus interrupted. "Business is business, and my business is doing just fine without your help. Now, let's not be hasty." Sebastian's voice took on a wheedling tone. "There's no reason we can't put that unfortunate meeting behind us. I'm prepared to offer you a very generous partnership deal. You'd maintain creative control, of course, but you'd have access to our manufacturing capabilities, our distribution network, our relationships with major retailers." Marcus found himself smiling, remembering his sister's words from months earlier about getting what he needed from that first meeting. "Sebastian, can I ask you something?" "Of course. Do you remember what you said about fashion requiring an understanding of culture and the ineffable quality of taste?" "Yes, and I still believe that's true." "So do I. But I think you misunderstood whose culture and whose taste actually matter. You thought fashion was about impressing people like you, but it turns out, it's about serving people like me. People who were never supposed to have access to beautiful, well-made things. People who were told they should be grateful for whatever scraps the industry decided to throw them." Marcus stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city where tomorrow he'd show his collection to buyers and editors from around the world. "The culture I understand is the culture of people who work hard, who value substance over pretense, who want to look good without pretending to be someone they're not. And it turns out that's a much bigger market than the handful of people who can afford $1,000 handbags." "Marcus, I think you're making this more complicated than it needs to be." "No, Sebastian. You made it complicated when you decided that my background disqualified me from having opinions about clothing. When you laughed at the idea that someone like me could understand fashion, you made it about more than business. You made it personal." The silence stretched out between them. Finally, Sebastian spoke, his voice tight with barely controlled frustration. "So you're saying no? You're going to let pride get in the way of a smart business decision?" "I'm saying no because it's a smart business decision. Marcus replied, "Everything I've built, I built by staying true to the vision you told me was worthless. Why would I compromise that now by partnering with someone who fundamentally doesn't understand what we're trying to do?" After he hung up, Marcus sat in the quiet hotel room, thinking about the journey that had brought him here. Tomorrow, models would walk down a runway wearing his designs, and buyers from major department stores would place orders worth millions of dollars. Fashion magazines would write about his vision and his story, but more than any of that, he thought about the emails and messages he received every day from people who felt seen by his brand, who felt like someone in the fashion industry finally understood them. The next evening, after his runway show had received a standing ovation and orders had poured in from retailers across 3 continents, Marcus found himself at an after-party surrounded by the same type of people who had ignored him just months earlier: fashion editors, socialites, and industry insiders who now wanted to claim they'd always believed in his vision. But the conversation that mattered most came from an unexpected source. A young black woman approached him near the end of the evening, notebook in hand. "Mr. Williams, I'm sorry to bother you, but I'm a fashion student at Parsons, and I just wanted to say thank you." "Thank you for what?" "For showing people like me that we belong here too. I've been designing clothes since I was little, just like you, but I was starting to think maybe I wasn't sophisticated enough for this industry. Then I saw your video, and I realized the problem wasn't me, it was an industry that didn't understand me." Marcus smiled, remembering his own uncertainty just months earlier. "What's your name?" "Jasmine. Jasmine Rodriguez." "Jasmine, can I see your work?" Her eyes widened. "Really? You want to see my designs?" "I'd love to." As Jasmine opened her portfolio, revealing sketches that showed the same combination of practical beauty and cultural understanding that had driven Marcus's own work, he realized that Sebastian had been wrong about more than just Marcus's potential. He'd been wrong about the entire future of fashion. The industry wasn't just changing because Marcus had succeeded despite Sebastian's dismissal. It was changing because there were hundreds, maybe thousands of designers like Jasmine coming up behind him, people who'd been told they didn't belong but refused to accept that judgment. 3 years later, Everyday Excellence had become one of the fastest growing fashion brands in America, with flagship stores in New York, Los Angeles, and Chicago, and international expansion underway. Marcus had been featured on the cover of Time magazine as one of the year's most influential people. He'd spoken at business schools and design conferences, sharing the story of how rejection had become the foundation for success. But the moment that meant the most to him came during a quiet Tuesday afternoon in his Brooklyn headquarters. He was reviewing designs for the upcoming season when his assistant knocked on his door. "There's someone here to see you," she said. "He doesn't have an appointment, but he says it's important. His name is Sebastian Rothschild." Marcus looked up from his sketches, surprised. It had been 2 years since Sebastian's last attempt to reach out. A formal letter from his lawyers suggesting that Marcus's public telling of their first meeting constituted defamation. Marcus's lawyers had responded with transcripts of the recorded meeting. Sebastian had apparently forgotten that all meetings at Vogue Atelier were routinely recorded for legal purposes. "Send him in," Marcus said. Sebastian entered the office looking older than Marcus remembered, his silver hair now fully white, his expensive suit unable to hide a slightly defeated posture. He looked around the space, at the walls covered with magazine covers featuring Marcus's designs, at the sketches and fabric samples that showed a business in full creative bloom, at the photographs of Marcus with celebrities and world leaders who wore his clothes. "Quite an operation you've built here," Sebastian said, his British accent as crisp as ever but lacking its former arrogance. "Thank you. Please, sit down." Marcus gestured to one of the chairs across from his desk. "What brings you by?" Sebastian sat carefully, as if the chair might not support him. "I suppose you've heard about Vogue Atelier." Marcus had heard. The company had been struggling for the past 2 years, losing clients to newer, more diverse design houses that better understood contemporary culture. Just last month, they'd announced they were closing their New York office and consolidating operations in London. "I heard. I'm sorry about the staff layoffs." "Yes, well," Sebastian cleared his throat, "the industry has changed quite rapidly. Clients want different things now, things we perhaps weren't prepared to provide." They sat in silence for a moment. Finally, Sebastian spoke again, his voice quieter than Marcus had ever heard it. "I came to apologize." Marcus had imagined this moment many times over the years, had pictured Sebastian's eventual recognition of how wrong he'd been. But now that it was happening, Marcus found he felt no satisfaction. No vindication, just sadness for time and opportunities wasted on both sides. I was wrong about you, Sebastian continued. Wrong about your work, wrong about what the market wanted, wrong about what fashion could be, but more than that, I was wrong about who deserves to have their voice heard in this industry. I let my own prejudices blind me to talent and vision. I appreciate you saying that. I don't expect your forgiveness. I certainly don't deserve it. But I wanted you to know that I understand now what I couldn't see then. You didn't fail to understand fashion. Fashion failed to understand you, and in doing so, it failed to understand the future. Sebastian stood up, extending his hand. This time, Marcus shook it. For what it's worth, Sebastian said, I'm glad I was wrong. The industry is better because you didn't listen to people like me. After Sebastian left, Marcus sat alone in his office, looking out at the Brooklyn street where he'd grown up, where he'd first dreamed of creating something beautiful and meaningful. Tomorrow, he had meetings with investors who wanted to help him expand into home goods and accessories. Next week, he was flying to Milan to speak at a conference about the future of sustainable fashion. But tonight, he was thinking about a 15-year-old kid making a prom dress for his sister in their mother's kitchen, driven by the simple belief that everyone deserved to feel beautiful and confident in their own skin. That kid had been told he didn't understand fashion, that he didn't belong in a world of sophistication and taste. As it turned out, he'd understood fashion perfectly. He'd just understood it differently than the people who'd appointed themselves its guardians, and in the end, that difference had made all the difference in the world. The last laugh, Marcus realized, wasn't about proving Sebastian wrong. It was about proving that there had always been room in fashion for everyone. It just took someone willing to make that room himself.